This is the Distinctly Detroit podcast, the only pod that explores why one wants to be in the D. I am your host, Feodorship III, the director of the University of Michigan Detroit Center. Join me as I interview students, scholars, leaders, and innovators about living, working, and loving in Detroit. All right, welcome back to the Distinctly Detroit podcast. Today's guest is an artist and an educator. He is the Fine Arts Department Chair with Cranbrook Schools and has an upcoming solo exhibition with the Michigan Contemporary Art in Detroit Museum in May of 2024. He's an alum of the University of Michigan with a Bachelor of Fine Arts from the Stamp School of Art and Design and earned his Master's of Arts in Teaching from Wayne State University. He was recently featured in American Masters with PBS. The film Senghor Reid, Make Way for Tomorrow was showcased at the 2023 FREEP Film Festival. Reid was selected to be one of the 3 Detroit artists for the Bagley Mobility Hub Public Art Project with the Michigan Central Station. Please help us welcome the prolific Senghor Reid. Welcome, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate you coming on.
Thank you.
Glad to have you here today.
Good to be here.
So you were born and raised in Detroit. What side of town did you grow up on?
Born and raised in Detroit. I grew up on the west side, but we lean more southwest. I grew up right off of Joy Road, so okay. Right at the sort of the beginning of what we know as Southwest Detroit.
Okay, and you grew up with an artistic family. Your parents are both artists, and you and your mother currently share a studio to this day.
Right. So my mother's an artist. My mother, her name is Shirley Woodson, and she has been a working artist her whole life, ever since I would say she was in high school, which that would have been the 1950s actually. And then my father was not an artist. He was an art collector. He was a collector, a supporter of the arts, and did everything he could, even beyond the fine arts. I mean, he was an avid supporter of the performing arts as well, and especially music. He even had a radio program, a jazz radio program, for a time on WDET here in Detroit. So my father worked very hard to support artists in their endeavors.
Okay.
Yep.
So growing up in this kind of environment, you obviously were exposed to lots of different art and culture. When did you decide for yourself that you wanted to be an artist? And how did you decide on the form of art you would focus on?
Well, I can remember the first time my mom put a pair of scissors in my hand. I was about 3 years old. And from that point on, I was always making art. My mother, was raising 2 boys, and so she would often be working at home, while she's caring for us. And so I was just that little boy. I wanted to do what mommy was doing. Mommy was painting. I would see her, and she looked like she was having fun, and I wanted to be a part of it. So she would often, be painting at the kitchen table, and she'd set me up at my little kiddie table, some paper and some watercolor paints, and I would just be painting alongside her for hours, And so over time, as I grew up, I was involved in a lot of things. I did everything, man. I was an usher at church. I was in the choir. I played clarinet in the band. I played sports, primarily basketball and soccer. Of course, I was doing my art and all these other activities. But as time went on in high school, as some of those other things fell off, I was still making art. And it became apparent that no matter what, quote unquote profession I was going to do, my real profession was always going to be an artist.
Okay. Mm-hmm. So did you show promise early on? Is it something that just came natural to you? Did you have to work at it? And when one as someone with no artistic ability at all, how does one know you have ability? Like, what? Oh, you just look at something and instantly it comes and it manifests that way. But
Right.
how do you know?
Oh, I didn't know, honestly. It was just something that we did. I would be remiss if I forgot to mention my father's name is Edsel Reid, or was Edsel Reid. But us as a family, for us, art was a way of life. And so, when we left town as a family, we didn't take a vacation and go to the beach somewhere. Like, we went to other cities, other states to see art.
Okay.
We went to
Visiting
go to an art
museums.
conference
Okay.
or to see the show at the art museum. We didn't we didn't do a lot of touristy stuff. I remember we one time we went to New York City. I was a little boy, and we begged my father to take us to the top of the Empire States Building, and he took us up there. We were up there for about 5 minutes.
All right, we seen it. Come on. We gotta go to the Met now.
Gotta go to the Met. Gotta go here. Gotta go there.
Yeah.
Gotta go meet some artists somewhere. So I never really thought about whether or not I was good or not good. I was just always in the act of making art and being around art, being immersed in such a rich arts community here in Detroit. And maybe middle school, high school, then it was like, okay, kids started saying Senghor can draw, or he's
Yeah.
good. You want somebody to, draw Batman real good? Ask Senghor to draw it.
Okay.
And that started becoming aware then that, okay, like, I guess I am really talented at this. But before that, I was just always striving to get better and striving to just draw every day.
Okay. That's cool. Now, going through your background, my crack research team, we saw something that stood out to us. You started your high school career at Renaissance High School.
Yes. Yes.
Where did you finish your high school career?
I finished as a graduate of Cass Technical High School.
Go green, go white. Now,
every day.
That is like one of the most controversial things one could do in this city is you left Renaissance to go to Cass. Throwing no shade on Renaissance as the second best high school in the city.
None at all.
Because I'm a Cass Tech graduate, so yeah, I can say that. What prompted you to leave? For real?
So at Renaissance High School, well, first let me say I was fortunate and blessed enough to get the best of both worlds. I'll put that out there. But
way to say.
Yeah. Well, at Renaissance High School, I had the privilege of working under Miss Oni Aquila. She was the art teacher there, and she was the only art teacher at Renaissance. And Miss Aquila was a photographer. And so most of my training early on at Renaissance was in photography, with some additional drawing, design. I remember I learned calligraphy. She taught a calligraphy class, fashion illustration. But primarily, I took photography for those 3 years at Renaissance. And when I was about to go to my senior year, I had exhausted everything that she had to offer as far as classes were concerned. There were no more art classes for me to take at Renaissance. And going into my senior year, it's like it's time to develop my portfolio and really pull that together. And then really, I would say, ascend to a higher level of art making ability as a senior. And I think, Miss Aquila recognized that. I also think Miss Marion Stevens, who was the head of the art department over at Cass Tech, and who knew me, my mother, and all our art teachers know each other in Detroit, knew that as well and suggested, like, hey, it might be good for Senghor to make a switch. And so I had to go to summer school, tie up some loose ends from Renaissance, but I was able to go to Cass Tech for my senior year. At Cass Tech, you had 10 art teachers,
Yeah.
a full program where, in both 2D and 3D. Even if I wanted to go into drafting or something like that, like there was just so much more available to me at Cass Tech.
Mhm.
And since I had taken so many academic courses at Renaissance, when I got to Cass, I had like just about all art classes. I had like uh, 6 art classes, English, and AP Government.
Okay.
And so I was able to, my first semester, I got a 3.8 GPA and ended my senior year with a 4.0 GPA. And I really flourished at Cass Tech. And it's interesting. I'm really glad I went to Cass Tech. I definitely consider myself a technician, and I am. Um, I'm glad I started at Renaissance. I don't know that I was mature enough to start at Cass.
That downtown yeah, it's something
It
else.
was something else.
Yeah.
So we all made the right decisions as far
Yeah.
as my high school career was concerned. And then I went on to teach at Cass,
Okay. That's
later on. So,
that's
which
great.
I'm
It
sure
had to
we'll
be
get to.
cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you went to Cass. You graduated from Cass. I imagine I'm really curious as to what made you choose U of M as far as the art school. I mean, all of the art schools in the country, U of M's art school is pretty cool, but
hmm
I think with your background and exposure, I'm surprised you didn't go to a school in New York or something like that. What made you pick U of M?
Well, that was a combination of factors. Number one, I personally wanted a full college experience. And so many of my other friends were going to the College for Creative Studies, which was great. But in looking at their program, there was some other interests that I had. I've always fashioned myself as a history buff. I've always enjoyed writing. And I knew that there were some other things that I wanted to learn how to do and I enjoyed doing that I knew I wouldn't be able to do if I went just strictly to an art school. And so while I applied to CCS, most of the other schools that I applied to were, small liberal arts colleges, and Wayne State, U of M, MSU. So I applied to several schools, and I remember going to my doctor uh, for a random checkup around the time, and I had been admitted to U of M as well as some other universities. And I remember, him saying like, "Oh, where do you think you're gonna go to college?" I'm like, "Oh, I don't know. I really like Oberlin, and and I think I got in the University of Maryland. I really like that school, and I got in the U of M." He was like, "Oh, you got in the U of M? Oh, well, I don't see what is there to decide?
Yeah.
Like, you got into the school." And so it kind of woke me up a little bit, and I took a step back and really looked at University of Michigan and realized like, wow, like this is a tremendous opportunity. This is a great school. And I looked beyond just the football team and the Fab Five,
Yeah.
and really like took some time to really figure out what would be the best decision for me to make. And I have to also add, my brother uh, uh, was a student at Florida A&M.
Okay.
And so my parents were not gonna let me go. They
Okay.
weren't gonna let me go too far away from home. He was the one that was able to have that experience. They were like, "Oh no, you're gonna be
Stay
much closer
close.
to home." Yeah.
Okay.
But it was great. It was really tremendous. I'm so grateful that I made that decision to go to University of Michigan.
Yeah. And what was your experience like at was it the penny stamp school when you were there, or was it had not
No.
had to change the name yet?
No, it had
Okay.
the
It was still just plain School of Art and Design.
School of Art and
Okay.
Design. Yep.
So were you there when they did the curriculum change and they forced all the students to take different things throughout their first 2 years? You weren't there for during that period.
No, no.
Okay, so you got in when you were able to kind of jump in and just focus on your specific area of art. So what did you primarily focus on?
So my primary focus was in drawing and painting.
Okay.
And yeah, I was there right before the switch had taken place.
Okay.
And it's a double-edged sword, right? For me, yes, I was able to focus in basically 2D arts, drawing, painting, printmaking, design, photography. But there was a point at which I knew I needed to expand my skill set. And I tried to uh, register for computer graphics, and so because I wanted to learn how to do Photoshop, and I wanted to. I think there was some sort of industrial or commercial arts offering that I tried to take, and they were like, nope, that is specifically for students who are studying in that area,
Yeah.
in that discipline. And so there were a lot of areas of study at the School of Art and Design that I wasn't allowed or wasn't able to be a part of.
Okay.
And so I was kind of upset when the switch took place. And I was like, oh, now they open up the program.
So that's why I ran into a lot of students who was upset. They made that switch. They were like, "I just want to focus."
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right,
Like,
right, right.
no, we're not trying to make starving artists. So,
Right.
but at least you also during your time you did a visiting semester or visiting year at an institution in New York before you finished your work. What was that like? What was that about?
That was amazing. My so my primary teachers at U of M were Al Hinton and Jim Cogswell. Jim Cogswell, who is still a professor at U of M, and uh, I think that they both saw in me a need for me to have an artistic experience outside of school, and they felt like myself, and they asked a couple of other students, if we would be interested in studying at the New York Studio School of Drawing, Painting, and Sculpture. And I said, absolutely, would love to go. And I spent a summer in New York City, and we had an intensive. It was called a marathon course. So basically, we had to be there 8 a.m. sharp in the morning, and we made art all the way until, I would say 8 o'clock at night, um, with few breaks in a hot building,
Mm.
in a building that it's an older building too. So the way in which classrooms were really interesting, and so it was an intensive, labor intensive experience that was about work, and the physical work of being an artist. And I got a chance to know what it was like to really be dedicated and fully immersed, fully present in the practice of making art or in the act of making art. And it was a phenomenal experience. I got to I lived in Bedford Stuyvesant, with a close uh, family that's very close to my family, and I mean it was amazing, absolutely amazing. And I came back with a whole new perspective on what it meant to be an artist and what it took to make work, to make art. And I'm forever grateful for that experience.
Okay. And I'm curious, as again, you grew up in an artistic household. Mothers are artists, fathers are stringent supporter of the arts. Curious, what does your brother do now?
My brother is an art educator, or I'm sorry, excuse me. My brother's an educator. He's a teacher. He teaches more so elementary and middle school students,
Okay.
and primarily math and science.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Math and stuff. We
Mm-hmm.
got somebody solid. Everyone else is in the air. So you went to U of M.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you started at Renaissance. You finished at Cash. You went to U of M. You went to New York, and then you came back to Detroit.
Yes.
You started a career teaching um, at a school in Detroit while
Mm-hmm.
you pursued your master's in education.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, you did all this, and you were still making art.
Mm-hmm.
How were you able to balance teaching, uh, working as a teacher, being continuing as a student, and working as an artist? How were you able to balance that during that time?
Um, I, I just, I don't know. Like, actually, I mean, well, let me not say I don't know. I mean, well, number one, I've always had a crazy amount of energy, to do what I do, and I was always very motivated, to do it all, and to do it all sort of together. So in a lot of cases, I would be making, if I was demonstrating an art project for my student, uh, in a lot of cases, I might be making art that I would later be able to sell
Okay.
in a
Yeah.
gallery. By the same token, as time has gone on, I've been able to hire former students to help me on projects.
Okay.
And so I kind of figured out very early on for me, how to sort of marry and bring together my work as an educator and my work as an artist so that they fed one another. Um, and it just structurally, as far as time is concerned, I just made sure that I always scheduled studio time,
Okay.
throughout the week, so that no matter what, I'm going to be in the studio on this day every week, period. Even if I go to the studio and take a nap, you know,
Rest is important.
I'm going right. I'm going to physically put myself in the studio, at a bare minimum of 1 or 2 days a week, and start there, and always make sure, and then also have different working spaces, having a separate studio. And then I would always have a studio at home, some kind of workspace,
Yeah.
for me to work on my art. And then, yeah, and then in those early years, I was also in school, at Wayne State University,
Yeah.
getting my teaching certification and graduate degree in art education. And so, during that time, I was teaching. I taught for 3 years at Nataki Taliba Schoolhouse, and then at Southeastern High School.
Okay.
And that's actually where I ended up doing my student teaching.
Okay. And you, so one of the things I'm curious about is who are some of your favorite artists, or who would you consider, other than mom, who's an artist that's an influence on you?
um, yeah, I mean, aside from my mother, Gilda Snowden is an artist who unfortunately passed away suddenly back in 2014. And she was probably my second primary influence growing up. Um, Gilda Snowden was an amazing and prolific artist, and used to love going. She and my mom were very good friends, and I used to love going to her studio, because I was able to see how another artist worked, and how another artist, aside from my mom, how she approached making art, and how she created a system for herself. Because Gilda Snowden was also, for many years, a teacher, professor at CCS, the College for Creative Studies. So I got to see how she balanced her two careers in the arts. And so she was definitely, my, if it's not my mom, I'm talking about as a primary influence, I'm talking about Gilda Snowden. And then, yeah, beyond Gilda, there's so many artists who I love. I mean, off the top of my head, love the art of Julie Meritu, Carrie James Marshall, um, Alberto Giacometti, Caravaggio, Gustave Courbet, um, Adrian Piper, Howardina Pindell. I kind of I have a list in my sketchbook. I have a top 20 list.
Okay.
So I'm trying to pull names off that list. But yeah, it's and very broad and a lot of abstract art. I'm a figurative, sort of realistic painter, but I look at the work of a lot of abstract artists, and pick up a lot of influence from them. Um, and I have to mention my contemporaries, artists like Sidney James, Mario Moore, artists who are right here in the
Mm.
city, Rashawn Rucker, Ash Arter, um, so many other artists, Tylon Sawyer. I could go on.
And
Yeah.
yeah, and as
Yep.
someone
Yep.
who's well traveled and spent some time in different parts of the country, how would you compare the art scene in Detroit to other parts of the country? Like, what makes the Detroit art scene stand out?
Well, so it's interesting. I remember having a conversation a few years ago with Bryce Detroit, and we talked about to in hearing your vocabulary, the idea of Detroit as an art scene is kind of a misnomer. We always look at our art, uh, the work and the people here in Detroit as an arts community,
Okay.
and it's very different here. If you go to New York City, you might look at New York City more as more of like an art market.
Okay.
Atlanta has kind of more of an art scene. No tea, no shade.
Okay.
But in Detroit, we have much more of an arts community,
Okay.
where there's so many connections and so many artists who support one another, so many artists who are themselves collectors, and there's a greater sense here of collaboration among artists, and that's something you don't always see in other cities. I think that's what makes Detroit so special and unique. And not to say that artists in other places don't support each other, but in Detroit, it's a little different. It's a little bit more authentic. It's a little bit more real, and it's a little bit more widespread and cross generational.
Okay.
And so the way in which we view ourselves as artists is like we're not really being true to ourselves and our artwork if we're not also working with other artists, supporting other artists, collaborating with other artists, and building with other artists. And I think that's what really makes Detroit such a special place when it comes to the arts community.
Okay. So, well, we talk about success and we touched a little bit on success and recognition. You got a whole PBS special made about you. That's that's like, to me, success and recognition. PBS come call it. Can you tell me a bit about that project?
Yes. So I was approached a couple years ago by Eden Sabelboro, who is a producer, film producer, and director here in Detroit, and she had learned about a call for artists or a call for entries, I should say, uh, that was opened up by PBS, and they wanted to spotlight artists from across the country. And so Eden was like, "Hey, we want to write up a pitch, and we want you to be the artist that we document." And I said, "Sure, like let's go for it." And we, she was humble about it, and I was too, which I think sometimes is healthy as an artist. Like, hey, I don't know if we're gonna get it, but you know, the least we can do is put our name in the hat and hope for the best. And so she pitched it, and we got it. And so they chose two artists from Detroit, myself and Sidney James, the muralist Sidney James, and so and Sydney had a whole nother crew, film crew, that documented her. But Eden, uh, along with Desmond, Love, and Eden's husband Thad, they uh, documented me for a full year actually,
Mhm.
and followed me around. Were in my studio filming me, filmed me during art exhibitions. We did interviews together, and they really got to see me evolve. Coming out of 2020, and which was so hard for so many of us. And during that 2021 year, for me, it was a year of healing and recovery, and so they got to sort of see me evolve and kind of come out of that darkness of 2020, and they got to see my work evolve and my artwork grow and develop, and it was a phenomenal experience, just to work with a film crew and it get to a point where we're like family,
Yeah.
where I don't even realize there's a camera on me. It's just me and my new friends
Yeah. Yeah.
talking about art and life together. And it was wonderful, wonderful experience. I'm so grateful uh, for them choosing me as a subject matter.
Yeah. Now, one of the things, again, I said I did some recruiting for the School of Art and Design during my career. One of the biggest challenges I've always ran into with parents is, yeah, worrying about their students being starving artists, worrying
Hmm.
about them being able to monetize their work.
Hmm.
How do you, how did you make a determination on how you were going to make a living or how you would monetize your work? And how do you, advice or recommendations do you have for aspiring artists? And especially, I run into a lot of artists who they don't want to bastardize their work or they don't want to give up the soul of their work by through monetization. They want to stick by their art and their ethics and values as artists. How do you help them reconcile the need for food with creating the art that you feel is representative of your work ethic and belief system?
well, I guess to answer sort of the first part of your question, for me, I'm super blessed and super lucky to have had a mother who's an artist and who sort of provided me with a model of what it meant to be a working artist, to be an artist professional, and to see my mother, um, you know, be practicing as an artist first, also be an educator, but also, to be a lecturer, to see someone who was a curator. My mother is one of the founding members of the National Conference of Artists Michigan, which is an organization that is centered around supporting and promoting the work of Black artists, in Michigan. And so I got to see this woman, raising a family, having this job as an educator, coming home, working with us, making art, and creating this life, this synergy. I got to see that being an artist isn't just about being in a studio painting. Being an artist means that you have other responsibilities to your community, responsibilities to young people, responsibilities to people who are maybe aspiring collectors or maybe aspiring artists themselves. So, to see her doing mentoring, to see her curating and putting together shows, uh, just so many things. It's like I got to see how fully faceted my mother's practice was. And then when I look today, there really are no rules, with the internet, with social media, and with the level of connectivity that creative people can have with the outside world in terms of how they you know, make, sell, promote, communicate their art, um, you know, there are no more boxes in terms of, you know, someone feeling like they have to make art for themselves, or they have to make art that's personal, or if they make commercial art, then somehow they selling out their true authentic self. Like none of that, that's all out the window now.
Okay.
uh you can do whatever you want to do.
Mm.
You know, and you can monetize it however you want to, you know, as long as it is something that is positive, that is going to, you know, support community, that is going to make people feel good, that's going to send out positive energy into the world. That's what's important. Yeah, because now, I mean, you got artists who, I mean, you can be on Instagram and make a painting a day, and sell it through Instagram, and all you paint is flowers, you know.
Yeah.
Or, you know, you can be, I have former students who became animators, and I say that somebody asked me the other day, if I had a lot of students who went on to become painters. And I said, actually, no. Like a lot of my students that I've been able to keep up with, they're doing all kinds of things in the art world, from designing clothes to becoming animators to being teachers, art teachers, curators at museums. I mean, my former students are doing all kinds of stuff in the arts, and so yeah, the doors are open at this point for young people who are creative, who want to be in the arts, with the availability of technology, the internet, information. You know, you know, going on YouTube to do art tutorials. I mean, so much is available now, that wasn't necessarily available to me growing up. And so now these young people they can do so many different things, and they can apply their creativity in so many different ways. And I think it's great if they're able to make a living doing it, regardless of what it is. I think that's phenomenal.
So you, in one of your most recent works, Grey's Anatomy 4, which is a self-portrait of you. Uh, okay, hold on. With self-portrait of what looks like you in your studio, you list a paintbrush, a sketchbook, and another item as your weapon or paraphernalia. Can you tell us what the third item is?
Oh wait, hold on now. What-
So, okay, in one
wait,
of your
wait.
most recent works,
Uh-huh.
Grey's Anatomy 4, which is a
Okay.
self-portrait of what looks like you in your studio, you list a paintbrush, a sketchbook, and another item as your weapon or paraphernalia, quote unquote. You know, can you tell us more about
Oh
what
man.
this item is and more about it?
Wait, so was it obscured?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, okay. All right, so all right, well, wait, you gotta let me tell the story.
Yeah.
All
That's what we here for.
right. So in that piece in particular, I'm a huge Marvel Comics guy, and comic book guy, period. But I always, my favorite comic books, even to this day, were the official handbook of the Marvel Universe comics,
Okay.
where they would lay out the character, their name, real name, aliases, their
Powers.
powers,
Yeah.
and then their whole
Background.
story.
Yep. I love those
And
books.
I used to love reading, and I used to love reading those books. And so around the time when I made that painting, I was really opening up as an artist. And so my superpower, one of my superpowers, I feel became my vulnerability, and my sort of newfound ability uh, to see and to know what it was like to really be completely vulnerable. You know, especially like in front of my students, in the studio, as an artist. Coming out of 2020, I was able to tap into a deeper level of self understanding and self knowledge, and so I would say that vulnerability became, one of my superpowers, and that I felt like I could lean on a little bit more in terms of me making art and figuring out what my subject matter was going to be. So in that piece, my subject matter was myself, and it was about me sort of revealing more of me on a personal level. And what I did was I took excerpts from my journal, and journal writings that I had done that were concerned with how water functions in different parts of my body. And so I was adding those excerpts from my journal into the painting, along with that, like, comic book sort of information, and dissecting myself, and so, yeah, so some of the things in there are obscured.
Yeah.
And certain things I purposely kind of left out, because I want to continue that
Okay.
in that same vein in another painting, in the next painting.
Okay.
So there's more to come.
Okay.
Yes.
That's cool. Well, you look in the documentary, you talk about water and how it's taking on healing properties for you.
Mhm.
And then you also, in an article, you talk about how environmental racism infects people of color, and they usually don't have access to water and its healing traits.
Mhm.
Um, what is kind of your first memory of water and its import to you, and how you realized its value to you in your growth and how it impacts you as an artist?
So that's kind of two pronged, in that, on the one hand, in my mother's work, my mother often uses water in a lot of her paintings. So I kind of grew up watching my mother paint water. When I first started doing it, I didn't consciously see me doing it because my mother did it.
Yeah.
But as I look back now, it's like it was already in the DNA. It was gonna happen eventually. um, but there was a certain point. I was probably, I don't 7, 8 years out of college. Before then, I had been painting lots of portraits, primarily people, and people in interior spaces. So, in a room, in a living room, in a kitchen, wherever it may be. And one day I was like, I want to paint somebody outside, and I realized that I had not yet practiced in my painting and in my drawing. I hadn't drawn a lot of landscapes or exterior spaces. So I was like, I really don't know how to paint clouds and grass and trees, because it wasn't something that, at the time, that I had focused on in my practice. And so I started teaching myself in a very formal way. I was like, well, I'm going to buy a bunch of canvases and figure out how to paint a cloud, and figure out how to paint grass and trees and the sky. What colors do I use? What colors did the old masters use? I would study some of my favorite painters and figure out their palettes. And at some point, I had stumbled upon water. I was like, oh, let me try to paint some water, and I absolutely fell in love. The I w- the, my the abstract artist in me felt at home, because now I was able to paint with more of my whole body, and not be focused on, like, the meticulous details of trying to paint a portrait and trying to make the portrait look like the person. When I was painting water, I could just be free, and I could really just allow for the paint, my body, my mind, myself flow, and it became very meditative, and over time it became very therapeutic, and it became a way for me to calm myself, to meditate. Painting at that point became more of a meditative experience, I would say. and I was much more mindful of my subconscious as I was painting water. And so I realized, like, wow, like I'm kind of living this experience with water through my paintings. And I wanted to go a little deeper, and I asked myself, okay, well, Senghor, you know, how often do you actually drink water? You know, like, what's the difference between spring water and tap water and distilled water? Like, and then, as I'm kind of going through this self examination as far as my own personal relationship with water, boom, the Flint water crisis happens. And so now I'm zooming out and I'm looking at the issue of water on a more global scale, and finding, how deprived Black and brown people are all over the world when it comes to clean and fresh water, and how so much of our water is being polluted, is being lost, and the fact that it's been going on for a very long time. And it's not always just Black and brown people who are suffering from a lack of fresh water. It's white people in this country, going way back. As far as me finding histories and moments in history where companies polluted water right here in America, right here in Michigan. And so water now has become a much larger issue for me. And I've been trying to figure out, as an artist, how can I better speak to this issue in my paintings and outside of my paintings. There's certain things that maybe I can't figure out how to say adequately through a painting. And so, I've been recently doing more performative art projects, printmaking. Started getting into other mediums where I can begin to explore issues around water um, a little bit more adequately, and um, in a way that I hope can be impactful for a larger community.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, that's profound when you get in, because water is, we need it, right? We made up mostly of water, and we
Yeah.
need it, and it's not everywhere. And they talk about the Flint water crisis popped off. It's a whole lot more places around the country with lead pipe issues. It's not just Flint. It's
No, it's not
something
just
all
Flint.
over.
It's Jackson, Mississippi.
Yeah.
It's Arizona. It's California. It's Nevada. Yeah, it's right here in Michigan. It's Mississippi.
Yeah.
New Orleans. Um, it's an issue that is taking on greater importance. I think, though, for so many people, we take water for granted because it's water. Like, you know,
You live in Michigan, by the Great
it's
Lakes.
by the
Yeah.
Great Lakes, and people just buy. They just say, "Oh, I'll just go buy some bottled water." And so it's not an issue for most people until it hits home,
Yeah.
right? And so as it hits home in more and more households, it's going to become a bigger and bigger issue for all of us.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
Oh yeah.
you know.
Whole different podcast, but they
Right.
talk about
Yes.
building a
Yes.
wall. I'm like, we need to build a wall around the Great Lakes to protect them for us. So, but so more recently, one of the projects you've worked on, and I had the pleasure of seeing it on your social media, but the Bagley Mobility Hub Public Art Project. Can you tell us a little bit about that and the work you've done with that program?
Yes. So at the Bagley Mobility Hub, there are 3 water cisterns, large, 40-foot tall cisterns, and 3 of my paintings were uh, blown up to a very large scale on vinyl, and then they wrapped the cisterns with my work. And this it was installed about a year ago.
Okay.
About a year ago, probably last November, December, and it is a part of the Michigan Central revitalization
Central
of that
Station.
part,
Yeah.
Central Station, and the oh goodness gracious, the book depository building, that's been redone, and Ford, along with Michigan Central, have they've done a really great job of revitalizing some of those structures, some of those large structures, including Michigan Central, the train station. And so the Bagley Mobility Hub is a parking structure, and my work was the first piece to be installed. There are two other artists who also have work on the building,
Okay.
and so that was a wonderful project, a wonderful learning experience, and it is my hope that I can continue to activate that space and work, do more interactive work within that community. And so I feel like the Bagley Mobility Hub was finally finished back in July of this
Okay.
past summer. So like all the landscaping is finished and everything. So I'm looking forward to doing more work
Work out there.
over
Okay.
there.
Cool. Okay. Well, we're going to transition to what we call our lightning round. And this is where we ask all our guests the same series of questions. It's more questions about kind of your engagement with the city and your perception of the city and kind of some of the favorites. But the
Okay.
first question is, what's your Coney order?
Oh, I love it. My Coney order, a loose burger with mustard and extra onions.
Okay. Who's your favorite Motown artist?
Stevie Wonder.
Okay. What's your favorite Detroit sports team?
Oh, my favorite Detroit sports team. Oh, that's a tough one.
A lot of people they're saying they sacrificed the Pistons so the Lions could be good.
Oh man, I'm a Michigan fan first.
Oh,
Does
we'll
that
accept
count?
that. We'll accept that. Who's your favorite Detroit athlete? Past, present.
Zeke.
Okay. What's your favorite place to go in the city?
Hmm. My favorite place to go? Northwest Activity Center.
Oh wow. Okay. Why is that?
It. I kind of grew up going to the Northwest Activity Center. It is a vibrant community center in the city,
Okay.
and the National Conference of Artists has a gallery there. I run a summer arts program out of there. And kids can go in there and play basketball and go swimming, and it's a very active, vibrant place to go, and I love spending time there.
Okay. And last question is, where can we find you?
Oh, you mean as far as my artwork is concerned, or?
Our work, this is your shameless self promotion plug.
Oh,
Where can we find you? Do you
my
have a
work is
website? Social
my
media? Where would you
oh
like to be found?
You can just look up Senghor Reid on Instagram, Facebook, all social media platforms. I'm currently a part of the Skilled Labor exhibition, curated by Mario Moore and Laura Mott, and that can be seen at the Cranbrook Art Museum from now until March 3rd.
Okay.
And those are the main things that are popping. I also have a shipping container that I designed, which can be seen down at Campus Martius,
Okay.
I believe for the rest of the month.
Okay.
Yep.
You still doing portraits for folks? That's something folks can get from you, or
Oh yeah,
you
yes, yeah,
commission a portrait?
yes. I have been blessed to be able to do 3 public art projects this past year. 2024, I'll be back in the studio,
Okay.
doing more portraits and more paintings,
Okay.
and I'm really excited about it.
Okay. Cool. Well, there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Senghor Reid, artist, teacher, educator, advocate, general wonderful human being, and a great dude. I really enjoyed conversing with you.
Thank
Thanks for
you.
coming on the show. This is the Distinctly Detroit podcast. Please, you can find us anywhere you get your pods. Please like, subscribe, and rate, and we will see you next time. This has been the Distinctly Detroit podcast. This is a production of the University of Michigan Detroit Center. You can find us anywhere you get your pods. Please like, subscribe, and rate us. This podcast is executive produced by Marlon Franklin, edited by Ranza Stanton, and written by Shaylin Jones and Fyodor Ship III.